If you've been following me on Twitter, you know that I have been doxed. Following my last video where I did a case study on the difference between harassment and criticism, the dissenting party in that video released a video containing my personally identifiable information in an attempt to silence me, and I've been working with law enforcement over the past week to address this. Now, if you're curious for more information on my story, I will link to a video below, which is a live stream that I did on my periscope addressing the situation in great detail. But this video isn't about the person who doxed me. It's about doxing as a whole and what you can do about it. So what is doxing and what can you do to protect yourself? Let's talk about it. Boop-boop-ba-doo. Doxing is the search for and publishing of private or identifying information about a particular individual on the internet, typically with malicious intent. It comes from an abbreviation of the word docs or documents, and refers to the compiling or releasing of a dossier of personal information about an individual. The methods used to acquire the information used in doxing are typically acquired from social media websites. So you're looking at YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, etc. And it's often related to internet vigilantism and hacktivism. Now, doxing has been growing in popularity as its legality remains murky. So the question arises, is doxing illegal or is it legal? Well, the actual legality may vary depending on where you live. It's my opinion that doxing in and of itself is probably not illegal if it's just gathering publicly available information. In fact, if you could think back 20 years ago, everyone was publicly doxed in a document about this thick called the White Pages. But the difference is that compilation of information wasn't done in an attempt to hurt people, and therein lies the crux of the situation. Doxing really has to be taken in context. While doxing itself may not be illegal when it is couched in the context of harassment or threats or endangerment to someone, where you're releasing their personal phone number or home address in order to swat them or in hopes that people will hurt them. That is where doxing becomes part of something that is illegal. And it also depends on what information is included in the dox. For example, if you release somebody's social security number, full legal name, and birth date, that's leading to a case of potential identity theft. Or in my case, where my medical conditions were listed as part of my dox, one medical condition that was listed was public and the other was private. So if it's true, the methods used to attain that information would have had to have been illegal because they would have had to have gone to one of my doctors to find out that information. And if it's false, it could be a case of slander because the information was presented in a document that presents itself as being true facts about me. So the question becomes, with lawsuits being inherently expensive and becoming increasingly difficult to pursue due to the international nature of some of this harassment, thanks to the prevalent nature of the internet, what can be done about doxing? What can you do if you've been doxed? Well, here's step one, and this advice applies to anyone who's a YouTuber or anyone who's thinking about becoming a YouTuber or any sort of social media personality or any sort of politician or public figure. Before shining the social media spotlight upon yourself, ask yourself, are you okay with the fact that everything you've done in your life leading up to this moment can become public? If you're not okay with that, you might want to reconsider doing anything that might make you a public figure, especially if you're doing it in the hopes of finding any sort of status of celebrity. This is particularly true if, on your YouTube channel, for example, you plan to discuss controversial topics or give your opinion on pretty much anything. In fact, it could come down to simply how you look or what you're wearing that can upset somebody, and when you have a global audience, your chances of upsetting someone increase exponentially. The best way to be safe in this information age that we live in, with the prevalence of the internet and all this information at someone's fingertips, is quite simply to fly under the radar. The instant you come to the attention of somebody who decides to become obsessed with you and singularly focus on you in an attempt to compile all the information that exists about you online into one place, you're going to be in trouble. However, there are some things you can do to prevent this. Because in the age of information we live in, prevention is the best cure. If you know that there's the possibility that you will have an increasingly public profile, be very careful about what information you release about yourself on social media. And depending on how concerned you are, you can even release information about yourself that is inaccurate so that when people try to dox you, they are led down the wrong trail. But let's say you've already been doxed. Perhaps that's why you're watching this video. What can you do now? This is where you have to look into what you can do legally. Generally, you'll start by going to the police and filing a report that you have been doxed. But remember that doxing itself may not be illegal, so you want to look at what crimes may be associated with the doxing. For example, have you been harassed? Are you receiving death threats? Is that person pursuing your ability to make a living, or are they pursuing you for bodily harm? These things will make a difference when you go to the police and you want to document all of it. Then, particularly if you live in the US, you want to look at the difference between a criminal case and a civil case. If your case is like mine, where the doxing was linked to death threats and threats of a public shooting, you're probably looking at something criminal. Crimes are considered offenses against the state or society as a whole. That means that even though one person might murder another person, murder itself is considered an offense to everyone in society. Accordingly, crimes against the state are prosecuted by the state, and the prosecutor, not the victim, files the case in court as a representative of the state. That, in fact, is what happened with my case. I took it to the police, and because it is a criminal matter, it was forwarded along to the prosecutor's office, who will be pursuing it from here. Now, if it were a civil case, that is where the wronged party would file the case themselves. Now, this is an important distinction because it affects how you're going to pursue this. No matter what, step one is going to be filing a police report. If the doxing was linked to something more criminal in nature, the police will be able to do more to help you. If it is more civil in nature, say for example, this person is attacking your means of making a living by contacting your employers, then it can be more civil in nature, and your best recourse might be by going to an attorney, in particular, a civil attorney. However, no matter what, you're going to want to start by filing a police report to get that paper trail started. If you go through a civil attorney, typically the end goal is more closely linked to monetary compensation for the damage that you've suffered. How do you know if it was criminal in matter? Chances are, if there were death threats involved, if the threat of swatting was involved, if the person released medical information on you, or any information that was not made public already that had to be obtained through illegal means, that makes it a matter where the police can help you. This includes social engineering, which is one of the biggest ways that somebody will try to come after you. This is another step that you can take to protect yourself. If you are aware that someone or a group of people is trying to dox you, make all of your public profiles as private as you can if they're not designed to be public. So for example, your personal Facebook, lock it down and let your friends and family members know that somebody might be contacting them to try to get information about you, and warn them that they shouldn't answer any questions that pertain to you. This can be done as quickly and simply as making a post on your Facebook, addressing the situation as a whole, and removing any friends that you don't know personally so that they won't be inclined to release information about you. So you've gone to your local police. What can you do next? Your jurisdiction might have a cybercrime unit that can handle a case like this. Now, cybercrime units have specific specialized resources that are dedicated to pursuing internet crime, which becomes more and more important if you are being doxxed or harassed online, including internationally. Now, in the United States, these cybercrime units are typically found at the state level, but depending on the nature of your doxing, if it's like what happened with me, where people in multiple states have filed police reports about the same person who's doxed them, it could even get escalated to the federal level or the FBI. Each of these levels has their own cybercrime resources that are dedicated to helping you. Typically, the people who dox you will try to post your information on websites where they can be anonymous and the information is available publicly. If your information is posted on one of these websites, you can contact that website directly and request that they remove your information. Most websites, like Pastebin, will comply and do so. Now, if it looks like the information might be hosted on a sketchy or questionable website, for example, a website that might be linked to or affiliated with the group that's doxing you, make sure when you visit that website, you use a VPN or proxy to hide your IP address so that you're not inadvertently giving the people who are trying to dox you more information. You'll also want to be careful with any emails or links that you receive, as they might be using IP grabbers to try to receive your IP address, which can be used to further pinpoint where you live. And when checking your emails, even if it looks like it's coming from a person that you know, one thing that people who try to dox you will do is impersonate people who are already your friends. So check the reply to email address to make sure that the email address that you'll be sending the reply to is in fact the person you think it is. Chances are it might be linked to an anonymous email account. If the person who doxed you ends up subscribing you to a bunch of spam emails, instead of having to unsubscribe one by one, especially if you're concerned about clicking on a link that might be trying to grab your IP address, you can use a website like unroll.me, which will actually look through everything that you're subscribed to and let you bulk unenroll from these emails. You should also make sure if your phone number is released that your voicemail doesn't contain your voice or any other identifying information that the person can use to discover that they did indeed get your correct phone number. And you shouldn't answer phone calls from people you don't know. And perhaps the most important advice out of all of this is that while you might want to increase the caution that you exercise when you're using the internet, do not change who you are. If you are somebody who uses social media for a living, it doesn't mean that you have to stop using it. It just means to use it carefully. So let's take a look at the bigger picture. What does doxing mean for journalists or analysts who try to cover an important story, but then have to worry about their private information being leaked in order to silence them as a result of it? What does it mean for private individuals who have to worry about their information being released? Luckily, if you're a private individual, chances are that the person who is doxing you and harassing you lives locally to you, so you have greater resources in order to pursue them. But still, is this an issue we should be concerned about? And finally, have you been doxed? What steps did you take to try to protect your private information, or did you do anything at all? Depending on where you live, what resources were available to you? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below and in the poll above, where I ask, should doxing be illegal? I'm very curious to hear your thoughts about that in the comments, and be sure to like this video so it helps spread the word for people who may have been doxed. And if you know someone who's been doxed, feel free to share this video with them so that they know what their resources are. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more interesting stories that are worth a second look.